1.
A very good day to you, and thank you for joining today's webinar on the European Union Energy Package of the Future. To say that the global energy market is navigating new territories is an understatement. The pace of technology outstrips regulations both in the EU and globally, creating a perfect storm of consumer demand for new technologies, prosumer-supported clean energy, and the adoption of e-mobility, all aligned to legislative climate action plans with precious little to model success on. Europe has a unique advantage. Private and public utilities and solutions providers alike work with clients and partners in neighboring markets. Grid modernization is advancing, and new legislation is being introduced to support the transition to a net zero energy efficient future. The EU 2019-944 and 2019-943 regulations will shape a common electricity market across Europe, create a level playing field, and encourage cross-border trade in both sustainable energy and expertise to meet the challenges posed by e-mobility and shifting market demands ahead of the global 2050 energy transition deadline. Today, we'll clarify the way forward and explain the implications and impact of the new legislation and the new range of opportunities available to utilities and their customers. We're joined today by 3 leading experts. Roberto Zangrandi is Secretary General for Distribution Regulator, EDSO. Laurent Schmidt is Chair Secretary General for Transmission Regulator, ENSO-E. And lastly, we're joined by Willem Strabbing, Managing Director at Metering Regulator, ESMIG. Our experts will explain the context of and possibilities created by this new legislation and answer any questions you may have about the European energy transition. Before we go any further, I wanted to share housekeeping information. The presentation and accompanying video will be available tomorrow, and we will send you a link so you can access that directly. Please feel free to ask any questions you have of the speakers at any time during the webinar. We'll have a Q&A at the end, and you simply enter your questions by inputting them into the Q&A box on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. Your host today is Claire Faulkner, Editor of Smart Energy International. Over to you.
Thank you, Bill. Today we're going to be talking about the new clean energy package and the implications on electricity and the internal market for electricity, all of which are set to change the face of the EU energy market. As mentioned, we're joined by a stellar lineup of speakers, Laurent Schmidt, Roberto Zangrandi, and Willem Strabbing. You can read more about them and the organizations they represent by clicking on the Speaker tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Laurent, I'm going to hand over to you so that you could perhaps share some insights into how the new directives are going to impact TSOs across the European Union.
Okay, so thank you, Claire, for introducing the topic and inviting me today to speak on behalf of ENSO-E and our TSO community. There's a few points I would like to highlight in the context of the coming regulatory change and the clean energy package, which we think are a significant transformation step into our European power systems. But I would like, first of all, to start with a few words about ENSO-E. So we are the Association of Transmission System Operators, 43 of them across Europe, and we are heavily engaged in the development of the technical agenda related to the operation of the power system in Europe. So in relation particularly to the creation of what we refer as network codes, which are the code of operating the system together, which are related to developments, long-term system developments, power system extensions, which are related to market designs and related to the system operation. The first point I would like to highlight is the fact that while this new regulation is very important, we are still very heavily implied right now into the implementation of the previous third package, and we have a community which is fully embarked into the deployment of the existing network codes, which have not been fully completed yet, with significant digital investments associated to that, new market platform, such as the ESMIG platform, which is now enabling intraday trading across Europe, or platform related to transparency information related to market data, or platform relating to reconciling a common grid model calculation, kind of a digital twin of the power system and a power flow happening across Europe. So that to say that we are seeing this package coming as a new step on the top of existing deployment and implementation, which are yet to be finished. And what is very important for us is to ensure a smooth and consistent implementation across these two elements. What we see in this new package is really a significant effort in terms of decarbonizing the system, which I think will require to accelerate the speed to what the innovation is adopted, not only in the power system, but at the edge of our system for all actors making use of our TSO systems. And so one of the elements which we see as a direct consequence is the needed accelerated pace of innovation and the need to think about what will be the design of the system in 2050, prepare for this change and for an electrical system which will be very largely exposed to renewable, potentially very close to 100%, and all what goes with the associated variability and needed flexibility to be able to balance the system. So that means that another element of this package is definitely related to the market design, and continuing on the trajectory of what we've done with setting up intraday platform, shorter-term gate closure, integrating renewables into the markets, and going towards market-based curtailments in a way, and really getting renewable to interact with the energy market at a level playing field with the rest of the other assets. Also redefining and going further in the way we manage capacity at borders between countries, and processes related to the management of this capacity at border, as well as last but not least, given that particularly that Roberto is here, is the need to define a new partnership with DSOs when we define the structure of that market for the future, and recognizing that we will be a joint facilitator, TSOs and DSO of that market in the future, and basically opening a new partnership relationship from that perspective, operating the grid consistently. So that's the second important element. The third important element is related to the strengthening of the needed regional cooperation between countries to ensure regional security coordination and being able to prepare for the growing complexity in the grid operation. And so here what the clean energy package directly imply is the continuation of the building up of regional security coordinator entities, which have been historically developed as part of the third package, which are now going to be further expanded into a regional coordination center with further functionality to be able to, I would say, go one step further into the needed coordination for the security of supply, for the regional security of the system in processes related to day-ahead particularly, keeping in mind that the real-time security of the system is to be managed in the countries by the TSOs. So that there's a lot of new coordination or expanded coordination required here. The fourth bullet point is related to new role related to coordination effort at a pan-European level, And so these imply new role for ENSOE and our community, role related to what we refer as risk preparedness. So being able to recognizing the system evolves in a growing complex environment is setting up new processes and rule to properly manage cases of risk, cases of crisis, and in particularity in view of the growing cybersecurity risk and in relation with the new network code which is going to be built on cybersecurity. And similarly, there is another pan-European development which is expected, which is related to generation and grid capacity adequacy calculation at a pan-European level, in being able to properly analyze the, I would say, phasing in of large amount of renewable at the pan-European level, as well as phasing out of, I would say, assets such as the coal assets, and of course the very tuned phasing of these ins and outs of generation assets is absolutely crucial if we want to maintain security of supply at the level of what it is right now in our TSO community across Europe, which I think is really a benchmark, remains a benchmark for the world. And so there's really a wide variety of tool, methodologies, calculation, a lot of data, digital platform to be expanded and added in growing the cooperation across TSOs in this space. Associated to this regional adequacy, there will be also need for building new registry related to capacity remuneration mechanism. And I think here the principle of the clean energy package is that in some areas of the system, some capacity remuneration mechanism will be required, in which case what is going to be important as per the guideline given is to ensure the cross-border participation of generation capacity across capacity remuneration mechanism, hence the need to put in place certain checks between these mechanisms. So in a nutshell, it's really a very demanding package. It is needed in the context of the expected fast growth of renewable and decarbonization of our system, and we are preparing to be fully ready for an efficient and fast implementation of these new approaches.
Thank you, Laurent. I think the implications for TSOs and the framework that you are going to be working within are going to be fairly significant, but it sounds like there's some really interesting times ahead. Roberto, perhaps you could talk us through some of the implications for DSOs.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, first of all. Yes, what my friend in Laurent just pointed out at the beginning of his intervention, so the need of a new partnership between DSOs and TSOs is what we are working jointly together since several years now, and we have in place also with other associations representing DSOs in different formats, I would say, so dimensions. What is going on is a joint effort to find ways to cooperate with the TSOs on key issues. So the first one we tackled was the issue of data management exchange between DSOs and TSOs, and then we went tackling on the active system management between DSO and TSOs. And that leads to that part of the intervention of Laurent where flexibility was the head title for that. And we are actively working at DSO level we have set up for these task force. We are working on flexibility aggregation mechanisms that will enable or still are already enabling the smooth relationship between DSOs and TSOs in managing the grid in the different voltage areas. So doing these, of course, we developed, if I may say this, a way to cooperate which has been also figured out by the new package, but in many areas we are already a little bit further than what the package prescribes. So this is the result of technological cooperation and cooperation among peers in terms of expertise that is brought by the DSOs and TSOs. Going back to the appreciation of the package, we issued at a certain point a huge document on this. It was February, and it is to be found on our website, where we commented article per article what is the impact on the distribution system operators, and you can find it easily. But let me tell you that the most impacting stimuli for the DSOs in this package are, first of all, the role of the distribution system in fostering and enabling the participation of the customer. This forces the DSOs to speed up their customer orientation. It was much more oriented to customer satisfaction and services to the consumers. And now we know exactly that those winning the game in the energy transitions will be the distributors that will be able to grant an upgrade of their relation with the customer in the direction of serving the grid user needs and serving what are the expectations of an evolved grid user or prosumer. Of course, we also know that not every grid user will turn or will convert into a prosumer. So we must keep an adequate balance between the expansion of the services for the grid users that are most active on the market and the regular grid users that are not interested in participating into the market. We have got rough data that tell us that still a large percentage of the grid users are not really aware of the potential of their participation into the grid, and many label this trend to promote the prosumer and the prosumer role as a fashionable thing that is going to cost a lot of money. I'm using very simple images to describe this, but it is what emerges from some market. This doesn't mean that we must not be able to render the same degree of service to both of the consumers, of course, because the modernization of the grid will be fundamental to accommodate the needs of the most advanced and to improve the services in the next years, and according to the new users to come, also for the regular or less sophisticated grid users. So we welcome very much as a whole the energy package. There are a couple of things that are really pushing the DSOs to new approaches. One of them is the role that will be taken by a totally new character on the stage, and this new character are the citizen energy communities. It is an important alternative to traditional distribution, and we are actively entertaining talks and with the pioneers of these energy communities and citizens energy communities in order to see how can we better interact with these kind of evolution. This will require, of course, a new generation of consumer, but also a new generation, if you wish, of grid managers that will have to consider in their planning and in their dispatching patterns the presence of communities and the contribution that the communities will be pouring into the grid. So this is first as a major change if compared to the past. Then we have a new body coming up, and it is the institutionalization of the role of the DSO in advising the European Commission as far as the legislative framework and the technological framework around the distribution system is concerned. The clean energy package also foresees the creation of a European Union DSO entity, which is meant to bring to the Commission knowledge and judgment and advice from the DSOs when it comes to legislate on a technical issue. It means that it will be the place where the cooperation with the TSOs will have its technical declination, and it is the place, the entity, where the DSO will converge in terms of expertise in order to find a way to collectively advance in the new management of the grids. This is due to enter in operation in 2021, and all the DSOs association are working on its conception and functioning. We are very well advanced on that. We are still very much polishing some governance factors that still remain open, but it is very important to see in the future an active role in of these entities in solving and depicting the technological framework where the DSOs will move their steps in the future, and where the cooperation with the TSOs will be performed. So we are very much interested, not only as EDSO, which is my association, but as DSOs as a whole in the development of this. The last part that I would like to point out as far as this impact of the clean energy package on DSOs is concerned is that we are indeed seen, along with the transmission operators, as the enabler of the transition. And to be the enabler of the transition, it requires quite a good vision and a good awareness of the allocation of resources. It is a synonym of investments, which is a synonym of how to spend the money that you must spend on the grid to allow all of this. And these can be done with a regulatory framework that remains reliable, but that is also able to accommodate the evolution of the technologies and the evolution that the digitalization and the advancement of the platforms that DSOs and TSOs will be developing. Nowadays, there are still quite a few holes in the regulation that really must be filled in order not to hinder a rapid succession of technological improvements and advancements. And yesterday, there has been here in Brussels one of the thousands of meetings that are held in Brussels every day, but this one was particularly important, and it was labeled EU ambitions, and the EU ambitions were targeted to 2024, so the end of the term of the new Parliament and Commission. Well, I tell you, the lead of this meeting yesterday was give us a dynamic regulation to make it really a better regulation. And we stick to this because we are very much interested in a regulatory framework that allows DSOs to leverage all of their experience in order to progress on the grid.
Roberto, thank you. It certainly sounds like things are happening on your side of the sector as well. Willem, that brings me to you. Last, but certainly not least, perhaps you could talk a little bit about some of the cyber and data security issues and just some of the work that is going to be impacting, or how some of these regulations are going to be impacting on ESMIG.
Sure, thank you, Claire, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm waiting for my presentation. Can you? Yeah. Thanks, Claire. So in my presentation, I would like to highlight the provisions in the current European legislation that refers to the access and the privacy and security of data that is produced by smart meters. Because basically smart meters, that is the topic of ESMIG. And what I would like to do first is to have a glance, a quick look at the ESMIG organization. Just a few words. We started as a European smart meter industry group, but currently, as you can see from the membership list on this slide, we have a broader scope and we cover solution providers for measuring, transferring, storing, analyzing, securing, presentation of smart meter data. So it's all about smart meter data, and our focus areas are, besides the rollout of smart meters, also security of data transfer, analytics, data analytics, presentation of data, and finally also the interoperability for demand response and demand side management. We are active on political level regarding the clean energy package, cybersecurity related legislation, but we're also active on technical level on issues such as interoperability for demand response and demand side management. Now let's have a look at the clean energy package, and especially where it concerns engaging consumers. On this slide, I took a few lines from the clean energy package referring to consumers and their engagement. The CAP, the package concerns a comprehensive and quite concrete package that puts the consumer at the heart of the energy transition. It asks for technology that supports active participation of consumers in the energy market. And the technology starts with having a smart meter infrastructure as a first step towards the engagement of consumers. And I'm deliberately saying that the smart meter is a first step because, as you can imagine, just having a smart meter in your home will not engage consumers at all. Anyway, the smart meter should be able to provide near real-time data directly to the consumer as a second step, so they can get accurate and timely feedback regarding their energy consumption. So why do we think this real-time feedback is so important? There are still many discussions. Are consumers really interested to have the insight in their consumption? And that's why we have asked the think tank, the research center Vasa ATT in Finland, to investigate the effect of provision of real-time data to consumers in general. And they have studied last year the outcomes of over 150 pilot projects, and they came to the conclusion that savings even up to 7.8% for electricity consumptions are feasible. If you have the right tools and if you are able to present this data directly to the consumer. Now, we know that in most of the business cases for smart metering in Europe, the percentages that are expected for energy savings are much lower. But we would say, okay, if we look at this research, then we really think that those percentages that are currently in the business cases and the calculations are feasible. Now, but if we look at the reality is still far from the expectations that we find in the clean energy package. I have just a few examples here on this slide. In the first place, a monitoring report about the smart meter rollout in the Netherlands has shown that so far 88% of the consumers that are offered a smart meter, they also accepted it. And as you might know, the Dutch consumers can refuse to have a smart meter installed. So if they say no, then the grid operator will not be able to install a meter. So we think 88% is a good result. In the business case calculations, we had a maximum of 80% to get a positive business case. So 88% is still quite a good result. But as in several other countries, and the Netherlands also, the installation of smart meters is decoupled from the offering of feedback tools and other consumer-focused services, simply because the grid operator has no legal right to go any further than installing the meter. And commercial service providers, they should take the opportunity to extend their service portfolio further and above of only selling energy, but selling also consumer-focused services. But they don't. And this monitoring report in the Netherlands showed that only 4% of the 88% that received an offer for a smart meter also got an offer for a tool to present the consumption in real time. So only 4% was really able to get a feedback tool, or at least got the information about and an offer about using such a feedback tool. Secondly, a survey that has been done by the Energy Ombudsman Network, NEON, in 2018, concluded that consumers fail to see the benefits of smart meters so far. And then finally, the European Commission has authorized the development of a new benchmark report. That's the second one. The first one was done, I think it was 2013, to check the status and experiences so far with the smart meter rollout in Europe. And a draft of this report is already available. So it is a draft. We don't have the final conclusions yet, but the draft conclusions or the draft report concludes that consumers are also here not well informed in general in Europe about the reasons behind the rollout of smart meters. So they might know what a smart meter is, but why is it there in the first place? And also, what exactly are the benefits that they can bring to consumers when additional technology is used? So we came to the conclusion that in order to solve current issues, cooperation between market parties on national level is key to make the energy transition successful. In the former presentations, you heard already that initiatives are taken for the collaboration between TSOs and DSOs, but also other market parties should be able to cooperate with the other market parties to make this a success. Based on our findings in several markets where the smart meter rollout has progressed or finished, ESMIG has listed the best practices for a successful smart meter rollout. And in the first place, the national regulatory system should enable and promote emerging consumer-focused services. Timely and non-discriminatory access to consumption data is needed for market parties that have the rights to such access. And last but not least, the collaboration that is needed to properly inform the consumer about the need for change. So again, why do we install this new technology? What is the reason behind? But also, what are the benefits for consumers? But also, finally, not less important is to address the concern that consumers might have about the new technology that is introduced. Besides the cooperation, the consumer-focused tools and services need to be available, and impartial access to consumption data is really key. Now let's zoom in a little bit more on the Electricity Directive, and then especially on the provisions about data access. In Article 23 of this directive, it is explained what data this directive refers to in the first place. So that is consumption data and the data required for consumer switching and demand response. In Article 24, the Commission is instructed to determine the interoperability requirements for such non-discriminatory consumption data access. But now the question comes, what exactly is meant with these interoperability requirements? When trying to achieve interoperability in the first place, it should be clear what are the interfaces that are targeted. So looking at the scope of the data from Article 23, several interfaces could be in scope, but many of those interfaces are already implemented in the European member states. So that is difficult for those member states to say, well, if you come up with a European solution for this data access, new interoperability requirements, we will change our system. That will not happen. Therefore, we as ESMIG, we have proposed and we prefer to focus on the interfaces that provide the data directly to consumers. In the first place, because these interfaces are not yet well established in the member states. And secondly, because these interfaces are the basis for the development of commercial consumer-focused technology. Then, in order to reach full interoperability, the requirements should cover the various layers of interoperability. So, from the physical connectivity to the use cases that define the flow of information. All these layers should be fixed, should be defined in order to reach full interoperability. Okay, so next, I would like to make a sidestep from the Clean Energy Package to the Cybersecurity Act, because that's also a legislation that we are facing when installing new technologies and provide new services to consumers. The Cybersecurity Act has been adopted by the Brussels Institute in 2018, and one of the main elements of this act is the security certification of ICT products in general. So it's not specifically for the energy market, it covers all these different markets that provide IT products, where IT products are used and services and processes are installed. ENISA is the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity. ENISA has been assigned to develop a European certification framework that should be the basis for certification schemes, because currently these schemes are developed on national level, which leads to fragmentation and high costs. The Cybersecurity Act aims to avoid this fragmentation and promote a mutual recognition of certificates among the EU member states, and a certificate issued by one country should automatically be accepted by others. That is the aim, the objective of this act. It is important to note that certification will be voluntary, so it's up to the member states to decide if, and if yes, what schemes they want to implement. Now, let's zoom in then on the situation for smart meters. Looking at the current situation regarding security certification of smart meters, we have seen that already 3 member states of the European Union have implemented a national approach for certification of meters. And considering the price of such certification, you can imagine what happens if all 28 member states would have a national approach, leading to 28 different certificates. That's the reason why ESMIG has taken the initiative together with Sensenlec and ETSI to define a European approach for this security certification. And the economic benefit of being able to use one certificate for multiple countries is really huge. We have chosen for a certification scheme that's already in use, is mature. It is adopted in 17 European countries. And those 17 European countries recognize a certificate issued in any of these countries. So one certificate is only needed for those 17 countries. And you can make easily a calculation how much money this would save. In October, the approach for smart meters will be officially registered, so the certification can start later this year. And our members, they already have given a kind of commitment that they want to use this approach for certifying their meters. I would like to make it clear that it is not the intention to replace the already existing national approaches, so like the ones we have in France and in the UK. But we target the countries that want to introduce a new scheme, and it's also very easy to calculate that a positive business case. We already have a positive business case if only 2 or 3 countries would use the European approach. So finally, I would like to say a few words about the ePrivacy regulation that is currently being discussed in the European Parliament. The energy sector so far was able to adapt its business processes according to the new data protection and privacy regulations that was issued a few years ago. There are no serious barriers because smart meter data can be collected by grid operators to fulfill a legal obligation, and the regulation allows that. So that's basically not a big issue. And of course, this data collection needs to be lawful and well protected. However, the new ePrivacy regulation is more restrictive and demands consumer consent for all personal data that is collected. And that's why several organizations from the sector are now asking for a change of the draft to make it aligned with the GDPR. So try to align these 2 regulations that both are about data protection and privacy. And currently the new parliament that is just elected is working on the file. So we need to follow this process closely and try to prevent any new barriers for the collection of consumption data. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation and would like to invite you to use the system to enter your questions for us. And well, thank you for your attention.
Willem, thank you very much. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we obviously have quite a diverse and wide range of spread in terms of the topics that we've covered today. So I do encourage you to send through your questions. And in the meantime, I think I'm going to start with one question which is predominantly aimed at you, Ron, and you, Roberto, and that is one of the elements of the directive is that no TSO or DSO may own storage. What are the likely implications to be of this? Roberto, I'll start with you.
Yes, that has been a very much discussed issue over the negotiation of the package. It is not a secret that the DSOs are not completely happy with the conclusion that has been reached, which not because the DSOs wanted to enter the commercial use of storage, but we had acknowledged maybe a bit too late and in a maybe a bit too restrictive way the use of storage for a tactical reason over the grid that we were asking for. So we really had to put a lot of effort to demonstrate that non-commercial storage, but tactical or technical storage would have been a benefit for the DSOs as well, especially in the perspective of compensating and accommodating the load flows that expectedly are going to increase from the bottom of the grid, so from the prosumers. So this is our appreciation for that. We never wanted to enter commercially the storage business and the reuse of storage. Certainly, if the market is not there, we asked to be put in a condition to organize the storage that we need.
But surely having the ability to utilize storage is going to be quite key to managing supply and demand and ensuring security of supply. Is this going to actually present technical issues on your side of the sector?
Okay, so on the TSO side, I think we do acknowledge the position of the clean energy package, and we do reckon that in the majority of the cases, business cases for storage are actually deregulated in the sense that they are basically flexibility assets which aggregator or balancing responsible party can aggregate within their portfolio to basically trade and transact into day-ahead, intraday, and even balancing and auxiliary service markets. Having said that, we also think we should, in very few innovation cases, we should also leave some space open for more regulatory, for applications which are more regulated, for example, reactive power management, in which case you don't have, as what Roberto was saying, an obvious market design, and in which case storage, which is primarily a technology, once again, could help also a grid operator to manage the system. So topics like reactive power, or even maybe some cases congestion management, could be topics which is still interesting to look from an innovation point of view. But of course that would be under a certain regulatory scrutiny, and we are very careful as a wholesale market facilitator not to, of course, ruin the rules which are behind these wholesale, day-ahead, intraday, and balancing systems and platform.
Thanks very much, Laurent. I'm going to move over to one or two other questions, and forgive me in advance, ladies and gentlemen, if the questions do seem a little bit random. We have got a number of questions that have come through, and I'm trying to work through as many of these as we can before our time is up. So please just bear with me seeming a little bit schizophrenic. So one of the questions that I have, and Roberto, I think that this one is probably aimed at you, but Willem, this may be one that you want to weigh in on as well, and that is, are market issues conflicting with security ones? Roberto, let's start with you on that one.
Yes, I already answered to that question on the question and answer. I answered in writing. And the answer is yes, of course, yes. There might be moments and issues where these can be conflicting with the evolution of the market, but I think that those instances are to be solved issue by issue, enlarging in the most large possible way the cooperation with the other actors on the grid or on the market. So, and this is not just a cheap and easy answer. I mean, we really mean it. I don't see the case of an enhanced court of justice to solve the conflict between the market issues in the electricity sector, honestly.
Willem, is this something that's likely to impact on your side?
Yeah.
Say that again?
Yeah, I think this was a question for me, Claire. I indeed. So in my last sheet, that is the main example I have is where the European Union is working on this ePrivacy regulation that is so strict that it might prevent companies that have a legal obligation to maintain the network, such as TSOs, DSOs, might have an issue with being able to get hold of that information. And as I indicated in that last sheet, the GDPR, so the privacy regulation, has a good answer on that. So far we didn't see any barriers there, but the ePrivacy regulation might give those barriers. But I know that currently in the European Parliament there is a major discussion on this ePrivacy regulation, because also for crime fighting, you might not want to have very strict barriers to be able to access information that you need to do the crime fighting. So those kind of discussions are ongoing, and they are in basically for the energy markets more or less in conflict with the current rules that we have for data transfer, data access.
I guess one of the biggest challenges facing policymakers and regulators is that by its nature, regulation is not fluid, but you need to have a very delicate balance between fluidity and certainty. So actually, Willem, my next question then is for you, and that is, what do you consider as near real-time data, and how real-time does it need to be in order to actually achieve the benefits?
Yeah, thanks for the question. For the research that we have done, or that FASA ATT has done, among the 150 pilots, it was common practice to have real-time data down to seconds. And that's also basically the state of the art of the smart meters that are currently available. They have an interface where you can get data out. So that's the current consumption and also current values, power values. In 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, or every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. And that was the basis for reaching those results that you have seen. I know that currently the electricity directives is talking about near real time, and that is defined as up to the market settlement period, where somewhere else in the file, the market settlement period should be down to 15 minutes, now or in the future. So they go up to 15 minutes. And to be honest, we didn't research the effect of having a value every 15 minutes. So the research we have done was really down to seconds.
May I add, Robert, may I add a consideration on this? So, of course, this is for the distributors an important issue. Also, if you are targeting the evolution curves of the prosumer evolution that we foresee for the near and medium term. 15 minutes might be too much. The consensus that we have is that 15 minutes for the time being can be there. Of course, we should be very much ready to cope with shorter span of times, and there are many distributors that already are working in data collections that is very much closer to the real time as you might imagine. The point is that there are 2,400 plus distributors in Europe, and that the pace of the improvement of the abilities, technological abilities of all the DSOs cannot be the same. And I'm saying that is representing the largest one. So we are very much aware of the differences between the different DSOs and dimension between the different DSOs. We have got a huge number of DSOs that are still bundled with in vertical integrated small groups or municipalities, and that maybe they feel they do not have such a need of hyper-performant metering due to their local characteristics. And this is a factor that must be taken into consideration, and it is not philosophy. Of course, there is an upper level of grids and metering standards, which is the one towing the innovation and the progress, but let's consider that the grid is not all a AAA grid. We have also A, B, BB, and BBB grids somewhere in Europe. So this is very important to be considered.
Thank you very much. I have a question that I'm going to direct to you, Laurent, and that is with regards to data. Are there elements of data that would be appropriate or applicable to both yourself and to the DSO sector and to the consumer sector? And if so, how is that kind of data potentially going to be managed? Laurent? Okay, I think we've lost Laurent. Roberta, maybe you can answer that question. Where is the intersection between data across this entire sector? Transmission, distribution, and of course on the consumer side.
Say that again, because I lost the first part. Sorry. The first part of your question.
No problem. Could you give some thoughts with regards to data sharing across both the TSO, DSO, and retail elements of the market? How much data is going to be applicable to all three sectors, and how do you anticipate this kind of data management is going to be facilitated?
Nasty question to be put as the very last one for what I'm concerned, since I must leave in a couple of minutes. That is the core of the discussion, as a matter of fact. We reached a good agreement with the TSOs on the package of data that we must exchange to guarantee a seamless functioning of the grid, and we are reaching with the TSOs a solid agreement on the kind of data that we shall be needing to properly manage across digital platforms the flexibility and the data that we already use to manage the current flexibility. So this is not a detailed answer. It is much more a broad answer. But bear in mind anyway the basic difference between personal data that must be highly protected with technological data that are the ones that determine the interaction between equipment and the commercial data, that are those furnishing and catering for profiling purposes about the customer or aggregation of customers. All data have got these three differences that to us are very important, and to our principles of sustainability of and social responsibility of the grid operators turn out to be basic. I think that the conversation and the discussion about the data that are really needed to properly manage the grid is still open. And it is going to be even more enhanced because of the evolution of different applications that can hit the market, proposing new aggregation or reaggregation of different data, even technological data, in order to improve the service. So the final answer from our side is that we have levels where we comply. First, I've got 44 members representing for some 350 million grid users. So we see that there is a corporate level where the data issue must be solved in terms of approach, at national level, and interactive supranational or super regional level where this must be tackled. On this argument, on this kind of interpretation, for instance, sometimes we are far away from the position of ESMIG, and an example is about the requirements for the smart metering, but this is not a discussion, it's a webinar, so I will not go into details for this. But what I must, no, it's true, but I must remark, and the presentation of Willem was very good, and I appreciated it a lot, but still there is among the different operators on the market, it is not a confrontation, but really a strong comparison about the needs. So we are a privately owned public service, those who are not municipalities. And the first compliance is to be a public service while being privately owned. So our commercial interest is regulated by a tariff. So whereas there are other commercial interests that are regulated by the law of the market. And these two approaches do influence a lot the perception of the use and the necessity of the data. So, but I must say that I found this webinar particularly interesting, and that I am available to go on other specific topics in the future if you will be as kind as to organize something similar as the Smart Energy International.
Fantastic. Roberto, thank you very much. I'm going to ask Laurent and Willem to just, if there are any comments. Laurent, any comments on the concept of shared data and the question that Roberto was answering?
Yeah, so I have a few comments complementing what Roberto has mentioned. First of all, for us, transparency in data is very important, and we already do a lot of work in the wholesale level in our TSO community to publish through the transparency platform massive amount of data. And what we realize is the data becomes much more geographically spread, but also closer and closer to real time. And we see an exponential usage of that data on this data hub week by week. So this is a positive news in the sense that I would say transparency develop, and while new network codes, balancing codes, and so on coming, we will produce much more data related to grid reserve, related to grid balancing, and closer to real time. So that is. And I think the DNA of our TSO community is open data when it comes to these data, free of any commercial license, and basically being able to make an optimum operation, an optimum usage at the edge of our systems. The second element, which is very important, is the fact that we need now to work more closely with the DSOs, as what Roberto mentioned. So we have a first step made with the first level of understanding. We are developing a lot of innovation, Horizon 2020 project, to really refine the granularity of that data, knowing where we need to evolve the existing boundary. And I think we will learn progressively on the next step, what is amazing is the new aggregator starting to come into our pan-European balancing systems, starts to be aggregator of electrical vehicles connected at home. And so that's fundamentally raised the question of granularity down to lower level of voltages, but granularity down to the real-time environment. And here what we see in the electrical vehicle is we see a lot of data produced by the vehicle itself out of meter, which are sometimes faster than smart meters. And so the question here is how can we deal with all these sets of data? So what we see as a whole trend, and it's a bit of an innovation area, is these systems ends up being a systems of systems with the question is not anymore where to store and where the data is, but how to define the API and the interfaces and how to manage the proper license of data across these interfaces. And this is really what we need to work as a strategic objective of the next development of these clean energy package together with the DSOs and with the aggregator to optimize the flexibility into our system. So this is absolutely crucial to work on that element.
I'm still online,
no,
but
thank
I'm
you very much.
in minutes, if I can add something to Laurent, Roberto, yeah? It is true that the generation of beyond the meter data is going to be wild. And the dynamic regulation I was referring to might be very much dynamic, but when those data are supplied by appliances that you have in your household and the grid operators are out of control of the quality and the quantity and the standards applying to those data, well, it will be a challenge, and this opens a brand new stream of reflection that we shall be happy to tackle. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, I hate to be the party pooper here. I have time literally for Willem, a last comment.
Claire, I didn't hear your last words, so I think you had a bad connection. Hello?
Or sign up for our newsletter today. Thank you very much, and bye for now.